Yes, but you did pass.
Call the Criminal Justice Public Safety meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Hogan, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to welcome our guest today, sitting in on the committee here, Supervisor Wild's granddaughter, Ellie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Ellie.
Welcome.
First up is assigned counsel. Joey?
Morning.
Morning.
This will be fast and furious, very simple.
As always.
As always.
Is there
Mike Dunn?
do you have an agenda?
Yeah, everything that should be right there.
You didn't pass it out?
I put it...
We'd like to pass it.
Oh, you prefer the person-to-person effect.
No offense.
No offense taken. You have it? I put it right in your
Single
chair.
sheet?
Sign council.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes, number 5.
We got one now.
Okay.
Go ahead, thank
Is there
you.
another one?
We can share, Brad.
All right, be brief.
These are just simple contract renewals. Contract renewal for Legal Aid Society of New York for the Family Court Conflict Defender. It's extended for an additional 2 years. That's what I'm looking for.
Motion to bring it to the floor. Supervisor Simpson, second. Supervisor Sokol. Discussion. Has this been a yearly contract before?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It's just, I felt more fiscally responsible to do 2 years, and then I can play with the numbers a little bit if they're looking for an increase, which will come up at the end of this current 2-year contract when this new one's done.
Okay.
And the next is...
Is there a vote on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
And the next is to extend the distribution number 5 for contract through oils for the Legal Aid Society. Covers their, I think it's a paralegal and one attorney.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by, who was that? Supervisor Garrity. Second by Supervisor Merlino.
These are just repeats every year. It's the same drill to get them up to speed. And that's
Okay.
all I've got.
And all these are in the budget as seen.
Everything is directed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Joy.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
I do have something,
I think they did.
maybe I can bring it up on my own.
Thanks.
It's actually
Be so quick.
the assigned council plans. There were comments that were sent back to the county from the Warren County Bar Association, but I don't know if those ever made it to anyone
I have not
that
seen
needs
it.
to see them.
I have not
Okay.
seen
I will
any.
follow up
Have
with
you
that.
seen any of that?
I saw the initial communication. I'm not sure what the status is. Marcy?
I have not seen it, so I don't know the answer to that.
Joy, you got...
She already left.
Oh, she left, okay. I'll check with Mary when Mary comes back. Ryan, do you know?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll check with Mary.
Okay.
I have it on my list, so it won't fall through the
It might
cracks.
have been sent to the Chairman Conover.
Yep.
Right.
We did have a staff discussion, and we're moving forward on it.
All right. Office. Under Sheriff, you have the floor.
Morning.
Morning.
Your action agenda, item A, we're requesting a resolution for a new contract with a company called Justice Benefits Incorporated. They make payments to states and units of local government to incur certain types of costs due to the incarceration of undocumented criminal aliens. This was as part of an RFP that the purchasing agent put out, who we selected.
Okay, motion to bring it to the floor. Supervisor McGowan, second Supervisor Driscoll. And there's no cost for this? It's
No, they
cost
take a
recovery?
percentage of what the government pays us.
And this is our first time doing this?
No, we've had this company for some time, but the contract expired, so we went through a new RFP.
Thank you.
See if there's anybody else out there.
Supervisor Bramer.
You never disappoint.
Was there anyone else out there?
No. Our Justice Benefits is the only one that responded.
Okay. Yes.
I'm sorry, Sean, I should know this, but what the past revenue collections, is there, neighborhood of what we typically get out of this?
I believe the last payment we got, which was around $2,000 or $3,000. It's not a lot of money.
Right.
Just so
Sheriff?
you know, Justice Benefits has been doing that, my 11 years tenure here. When I think the most we ever got in one year was $4,000 or $5,000. I could check that, but
And
generally in the $2,000 to $5,000 area.
I did see that they opened an application period for 2019. That funding is sometimes, on the chopping block in DC, but it's okay now.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Item B, request resolution to amend the county budget for the Queensbury School Resource Officer Program. This carryover of money from the 2018 calendar year into 2019.
I'd like to move B through E, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion move B through E, second by Supervisor Simpson. There.
Second.
Discussion. Supervisor Bramer.
Can you just give us an explanation of what's going on? What are we doing?
As far as what, with the money?
Yeah,
Or it's the school year.
So...
I just don't understand. Don't look at me like that.
Okay.
Okay.
You guys.
Every school district, with the exception of Hadley Luzerne, they're the exception because they were the first ones we entered into a contract with. All these other districts pay at the beginning of the school year. So in order for the money, we still obviously have to pay people in the 2019 calendar year. That money is stuck in the 2018 fiscal year. So it's just carrying money from one year. It's an accounting
Okay,
thing.
thank you.
Supervisor Wiles.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Sean, how are you doing in terms of the expense versus revenue on this? We said that we were looking to have the school district help us cover our costs.
So
Is that holding true to what our expectations were?
we're in the first year of it. So when we look at doing new contracts for the 1920 school year, any costs that the county incurs will be passed along to the schools.
So do you know how we're doing though?
Right now,
Yes.
it does cost us money to operate the program. One number that will not go away is the liability insurance. It's about $2,500 a year per officer.
So the reason why I'm asking is I know the school budgets have to pass also, right?
Correct.
So it'd be good if we were ahead of the game and communicating to them so they aren't in a bind.
They are all aware of what the cost is going to be. I gave them a ballpark of what it's going to cost.
Thank you.
Supervisor Beatty.
As far as the school budget goes, just about every school district that is authorizing a resource officer is budgeting for the payment of that resource officer. And they trust that he's let them know the additional cost to be aware of. So the school districts, I think this year may not have the additional costs in there, but next year going forward, I'm confident that they'll have the whole picture, the whole full cost involved. So this year, again, just the resource officer they're budgeting, and next year the full cost.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
There is an additional action item agenda. Doesn't show up on the agenda. It's requesting a resolution to amend the budget for the 2018-2019 Public Safety Answering Points Grant, in the amount of $169,025.
Okay. So, Supervisor Garrity, who was the second on that? Supervisor Simpson. Multi-year grant?
It's actually an 18 grant, but they call it 18-19. The grants are always lagging behind at the state level.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Any questions? Supervisor Bramer.
What is this for?
This is for the 911 Communication Center. It pays for upgrades, software, hardware.
These have come in handy over the years, haven't they?
Yes.
Sheriff?
I don't know if you all saw it, but I think some of you got it from the Association of Towns. The letter that was written by the federal government to Governor Cuomo and to other governors. Have any of you read that?
No.
All right, Ryan, we'll get it to you, make sure they all get it. It was a very, very terse letter to those 3 governors about how they've been stealing 911 money from using it from not what it was for. And the federal government, in a very, very polite way, they've done before, but with this new administration, they may go after them for it. So that would be good for us, folks. I've been saying this for 11 years, that the state has been stealing the 911 money. If the counties could get their fair portion of that 911 money, in my mind, our, Sean, what would be $2 million budget for the communications?
It's about
center?
2.2.
Right, so that $2.2 million budget that we pay for in Warren County, they get probably $300 and some million a year into that fund that they steal, and they only give the counties a portion of that. My feeling is, even if the state relinquished more of that, my goal is to get $1 million. Each county should get a minimum of $1 million from that money. If that happens, you take $1 million off that $2.2 million budget, that's going to make a huge difference in the taxpayers' votes. So you need to read the letter, and people need to go, the federal government needs to go after these states. There's 3 states, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and New York.
Yeah. Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, it was from FCC to Governor Cuomo, the governor of Rhode Island, and New Jersey. The 3 of them got this letter. It was in our, it came from NISAC.
You should all read it, Ryan, if you would get it out to all the supervisors, I'd appreciate it. I've never seen a letter like this before. This is pretty terse.
Right. And as a reminder, are these from the taxes we pay on our phone bills?
On the cell phone bill, right?
Yep. There's line fees for landlines and for cell phones, and the state keeps the bulk of it. The counties each have their own rate. The state's revenue should be thrown into these grant programs, but the majority of it is swept into the state general fund.
And the way they got really cute how they did it was they got their lawyers together and they're saying, well, you know, the way this law is written, it's for public safety, so they give $25 million of that, roughly $300 million. They give $25 million to the state police, so they're saying public safety. State police don't have anything to do with the 911 centers, but they give them $25 million. And when I first started, they gave all of the counties $10 million to split up. Where all of the counties run the 911 centers, you tell me that's fair? That is just so abjectly wrong, and nobody was doing anything about it. And we need help from the federal government. Hopefully they'll pay each county get their fair share. Because the people in the counties are paying the money. The state is stealing.
I just think it's funny that it's only 3 governors, you know, New York, New Jersey, and Rhode Island were the 3 governors that don't do it properly, and the FCC's after them about it.
Now, they haven't done anything, folks, in the past because of politics. I think this president we got now doesn't care much about politics, and he's going to make them pay with this proposal. I certainly hope he does that, because that's not right what the state is doing to this county and all the counties in the state. It's unfair.
Yeah, I know this has been a discussion at this committee before.
11 years of it.
On that, yeah. Well, let's look forward to a sunnier day on it.
I hope so.
Do we have a vote on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Under topics for discussion, just to update the committee, we currently have 6 vacancies for a correction officer and 1 correction sergeant vacancy. I've spoken with the captain and the lieutenants in our corrections division. They're working diligently to get those filled. And just to give you an example, I know I mentioned to somebody on the tour we were just on, I know they had 7 people show up for one of the PT tests that they just recently gave through civil service. And of the 7 people that passed it, only 3 people returned applications to us. So we have people taking tests, people passing physical agilities, but then they don't follow up and return applications to us.
Any idea why?
We do not know.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Sean, it's been an ongoing thing, you know, in my short tenure here. What's the trend line looking? Are we staying flat like we're always having 6 or 7 openings? Or is it moving up? Is it moving down?
These numbers should be coming down because with the availability of the civil service list, they can actually start hiring people off of it. So 1, take the written test, 2, take the physical agility, and we're at that point where they're actually filling positions now.
Yeah, Mike, and I think the answer to your question more specifically, that's been the norm in my 11 years. We've always had anywhere from 3 to 10 openings consistently. That's my 11-year experience.
We started out this year, I think, with 9 CO vacancies.
It was 9 and 1.
9 and 1, right?
Well, hopefully we'll keep on trending lower. Thank you, Sean.
Sure. Thank you, Sean. You know, and Sean, Sheriff, thank you very much for the tour of the jail this morning. Very informative.
Welcome.
Good to see from this side. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next up, Office of Emergency Services. All right. Thank you, Brian. You have the floor.
Thank you, Supervisor Leggett. Item number 1 on our agenda today, actually, Units 1 and 2, we have to reappoint the members of the Fire Advisory Board and the EMS Advisory Board. We reappoint them every year, and their terms have expired or will expire at the end of this month, so you should have a list of those that have been appointed to each of the boards if you have a question on that.
I'll make that motion. Bring it forward. Supervisor Garrity, second by Supervisor Merlino. Any questions? And it looks like you picked from the chiefs and squad captains.
The EMS Advisory Board is just squad captains or whoever each squad has the ability to put forth whoever they want to represent themselves on the board. 99% of the time it's the squad captain. The Fire Advisory Board, those are appointed by me.
Okay.
That's by state law.
Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Was that for Supervisor Garrity? Was that for both of them?
Yes.
Yep.
The only other thing you have are prior month's travel, which was already approved by the administrator and the chairman of this committee. Other than that, that's all I have. Just an advisement, you know, you've seen it in the paper, we're still following the water issues and a number of things like that. We do have the usual spots where we have issues, and the water's starting to recede, fortunately, especially up on the screw. So we've dropped about a half a foot since yesterday, and we'll be doing okay. No one has reached out and asked for any emergency assistance, so the people that do have water are the same people that have water every time, and so we're in good shape there.
Good, thank you. And I want to say, last Friday there was some concern from the Highway Department, so we gave Amy a call. She was very helpful. It was great to be able to have that reassurance on the other end of the line in case we needed help, that Office of Emergency Services is there. I'm prepared to help out as possible. So thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
I have a quick comment on that note. There is, through the Climate Smart Communities program, a project that the county could undertake where you look at we do an inventory of our natural resources and the risks that they might be subject to as a result of things like floods and other natural disasters. So that's something that I think Wayne Lamont is looking into.
That sounds good.
Another thing to keep in mind, that I know we have a lot of inventory already of our natural resources, but to be able to understand the risks that are there and what we can do about it would be another nice addition to that information.
You take that, and on top of our hazard mitigation scenario that we've done now, that Soil and Water is overseeing that on behalf of the county, that hazard mitigation plan, we've had that in place enough now, and towns have been able to make some changes, upgrade culverts, and do things where we used to have a much more elaborate type of damage where we would take out a road or whatever, and now they've been able, through that program, to be able to fix that. So
Yeah.
we're making good progress with that.
Great.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for your help on that.
No problem.
Good. All right, thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Next is probation.
He comes to me.
We do?
No, you don't go to this meeting.
Do you have it?
Got it.
I'd be glad to
Thank you.
invite you if you Yeah. No, not a problem.
Bob, you have the floor.
Good morning. I have a couple quick things to go to. This morning I have our juvenile probation supervisor, Amy Secor, with me. And she's going to talk in a couple minutes about one of the restorative programs she started and currently implements called Girl Circles. And Amy, just quickly, I describe her as one of the hardest working people in show business. We've taken on Raise the Age this year, and Amy is stepped forward and done a lot of planning, collaboration, and work with many agencies. She's put timeless effort into it, and sometimes we don't get to recognize the people that work for us in public settings, and this is my opportunity. She's done a fantastic job, and if not for her, last year we had 3 vacancies in our juvenile unit with retirements, and she held it together. So I'm probably embarrassing her right now. However, she will talk about the program a little more, because I think it's important to talk about the things we do and how we're looking to reshape what we do in the juvenile justice system. So I'll give her the floor in a second. But what I have on my action agenda is a resolution request to amend the current contract with Northeast Polygraph Services. When we initially did the contract 10 years ago, we had a dedicated funding stream from the State Division of Probation called Enhanced Probation Supervision Services and Sex Offender Funding Grant. That's a lot of words, but basically they gave us money to start doing polygraphs through different enhanced supervision with sex offenders. Through the years, that grant no longer exists, and it's been replaced by a block grant. The funding for polygraph services has been included in our block grant. We get a block grant from DCJS in the amount of $205,000, which is minimal to the work we do in probation. But included in that is $3,900 for polygraphs. So just to make the contract clean and accurate, we would like just to take the funding, change the funding streams in the contract, nothing else changes.
Okay. Motion to bring it to the floor. Supervisor Bramer, second by Supervisor Merlino. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And before I give Amy the floor, just quickly I'd like to touch briefly upon bail reform. In the governor's budget, bail reform was passed. And just quickly, with bail reform, what they're looking to do is not to have cash bail on misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies, with exception. Which means in the long run there'll be more work for our department in the pretrial release program and the release under supervision program. The presumption is, with some exceptions, that when police officers arrest individuals, they would issue appearance tickets instead of taking them into physical custody with a date to go back to court, and when they go back in front of a judge, they would be arraigned and then released, preferably on the least restricted form of supervision, meaning they would be released and just come back to court. However, in some cases, which we find, the judge may want a little bit more, such as people calling into a probation department or actually reporting to a probation department to be physically seen and have certain conditions. We currently have an established release under supervision and pretrial supervision program. We anticipate at any given time we have 65 to 75 people under our release under supervision program. There's many people arrested in the county for misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. So we potentially see the reporting aspect of our job with our pretrial release program increasing within next year. This goes into effect on January 1st of 2020. It's being overseen by the Office of Court Administration, which is interesting because we're controlled and regulated with respect to pretrial and ORR by the Division of Criminal Justice Services.
So for some reason, OCA will be certifying pretrial release agencies within counties. It has to be a county department or a non-for-profit entity. We currently operate, like I say, a pretrial supervision program under our department. So without getting into it, which I will certainly later in the year once we find out what type of guidance or regulations we get from OCA, we do have an enhanced program. We believe that it will affect our numbers in terms of people reporting to us. We interview people in jail already. We do it with a evidence-based failure to appear screen. In the legislation, it doesn't specify any particular instrument. So there's a couple of questions we're looking to see how that goes. Just for right now, I think it's important just to know that this legislation was passed and it will have some impact on our department. I'm hopeful that we can absorb it with the current individuals we have working for us.
And Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks so much for that update. So 65 to 75 people currently in this release under supervision, and we heard there's about 100 people in the jail as of today. I mean, some portion of those people are going to be in the population which they wouldn't be in jail under this new legislation. So sounds like your job could increase double. I mean, it could be double.
It could. The belief is to, if you look at county jails, historically there's more unsentenced people than sentenced. That figure's been well established through the years, and many reasons for it. However you believe people should be dealt with. What they're trying to do is to minimize the unsentenced population and make that basically, the theory is most people are going to go back to court regardless, but there's certain exceptions. So you could see a shift. Yes, we'll be impacted.
What about, can I just follow up?
Please.
What about the idea that many of these people who get an appearance ticket for our area are not from our area, and we're going to have to go track them down? I mean, is that true? What's our percentage of the population who's not really from here? And B, do we have like an affirmative duty to go track them down?
I can't talk about how many people who were arrested from outside of the area, but that would be one of the factors that would be considered with respect to whether they should be granted ROR or money bail. One of the problems could be if release was given to people who were out of the area and they didn't report, that would be extra work on law enforcement. We have to go find them with warrants. So there's the potential. I don't know what the numbers are of people that are arrested from outside the area. Certainly in the summer with the influx of individuals in Lake George, that would be a concern. So there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. There's been no funding, additional funding from the state for this. I mean, that's not a surprise.
And it's not like our costs at the jail are going to go down even though the population is going down. We just heard all about that this morning on the tour. Even if our population goes down because the unsentenced people are no longer in there, we still have to keep our staffing ratios up unless the state changes some of the rules.
The state would let you believe that there'd be a shift in county costs, but I believe what you say is accurate.
Yeah, we can't shift any costs from the jail to your department. No. It's not happening.
So as a Probation Directors Association, what we will do is we've advocated with NISAC, and we will keep track of data and present figures in terms of after we've had an experience with a year of what this fiscal year is. So,
thank you.
Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I read Assemblywoman Terry Warner's comments against the release, and she stated that she checked from the Washington County, and 80% of the people charged with felony were from out of the county. And her big concern was the cost of going and getting a lot of these people that have been brought up on charges, having to track them down, and the state is not allowing any money or any of the departments in the counties additional monies to go and get these people. And she said that could potentially be very, very big dollar amount to each county. So she said 80% in Washington and Saratoga County of the people charged with a felony were from out of the county.
We're not talking about felonies, right?
Oh, I know, but I just thought that...
Oh, just saying, if you extrapolate that 80% to say 80% of misdemeanors and stuff too, yeah.
The low-level felonies are still felonies.
It does talk about nonviolent elements.
Oh, it does?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. Well, yeah.
Thank you. I thought it was misdemeanors and nonviolent elements. Okay, sorry.
Good, thank you.
No, Commissioner.
Oh, Supervisor Driscoll?
Thank you. I also have a concern about those individuals essentially becoming wards of the county and being eligible for social services. If they decide to, if they're outside the area, decide to stay with a family member or a friend, now they're considered to be part of the household. As soon as they put their head on a pillow, they're a Warren County resident. That could be certainly a lot of additional charges that we're going to be responsible for footing that bill.
That's a valid point.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I will turn it over to Amy.
All right, well, thank you, Bob, for all the praise. I do want to say, I want to start off, did everybody get a copy of this handout? So, I'll just start out first with how I came across Girls Circle and why I came across. Back in 2017, I was about a year into being a supervisor for Warren County's probation, and I was reviewing cases with my Glens Falls school officer. 5 out of the 5 girls she had on her caseload were exhibiting serious risky behaviors, runaway behaviors, drug use, bullying, assaultive behavior, and very risky sexual behavior. All 5 of those girls had a history of sex abuse. So they were abused either recently or within their lifespan. They were all enrolled in individual counseling, and they were all enrolled in specific sex abuse counseling with St. Anne's, and none of it was working. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure supervisors, when you don't have solutions to the problems, your first thing is to find one. I also, at the same time, I do ICOT, so I do the interstate transfers, and I had a young woman, I think she was about 19 years old, who I got a report from New York City that she had been arrested for prostitution and possession charges, and long story short, she was actually trafficked. She was a victim of human trafficking. So I went to a human trafficking seminar, and I found a woman who had actually been running this program for a very long time in New York City. She felt it was one of the best programs that they offered, and that it was the most effective in reducing recidivism rates in her juvenile girls. With that, I researched the program, and it's SMASHMA has it as a research-based, evidence-based program. I went to Bob and explained the program to him, and he said, great, how do we do it? That was the next question. Who does it? Who's trained in the program? Because it has to be a trained facilitator, and it has to be approved by the One Circle Foundation to do that. So I kept looking around and seeing what agencies we had that did it, and we didn't have any that I could find, but I sat on a committee actually with Bud and Cynthia Schrock-Seeley about human trafficking, and I found Leanne Dorman, who is the victim service coordinator here for, I think it's Warren, Washington, and Saratoga counties. And she was familiar with the program. She actually had the curriculum and had been trained in the curriculum and was more than willing to start it for our Warren County probation. We did one, I think it was a 6 to 8 week session. We found it incredibly productive. We had one girl that had withdrawn because she was in mental health services at the time and was actually in a residential mental health placement, but the rest of them fully completed it. How the program works and how it's based is we have small sessions between 6 and 8 girls, all with risky behaviors, all either JD or PINs at this point, who come to the probation department for one of those reasons, either on adjustment services or diversion services, or actually formally adjudicated by the court. The program has a specific curriculum that needs to be followed, and there's reasons why we follow it that way. One of the things is making sure that there's not only an auditory and lecture piece and a talking piece to it, but also an activity piece, because what we've learned through research is that females tend to retain more information that way when they're actually doing an activity and talking together. So a lot of this that I put in your little packet here explains how they use motivational interviewing, how they use the resiliency theory and the relational theory to make this program work. It's trust. One of the biggest issues that our females come into our program with are trust issues. Developing that circle, developing that respect in that circle helps assist us with retaining the information, them being able to listen to their peers. It is not a lecture point where the facilitator is lecturing these youth on what they should and shouldn't do. It's a talking session with specific activities listed for each program. So this is one of the books, but if you look in your packet too, it explains like all the different topics that we can review. It's a huge curriculum. There are so many things. We will never get into every single topic in probably the next 10 years. The best part is not only is Leanne Dorman a trained facilitator, but I am now as well. What that means is that we can run more sessions, and that if she's sick, I can cover a session for her, because it needs to be a trained facilitator with another facilitator present, so there's two people there that are helping coordinate these services, and vice versa. We can also do multiple sessions at a time now, which we haven't done. We're running them back to back, but that's the key piece, is making sure. All my new juvenile officers who are females are doing this, so they're all participatory. Just to explain how effective I believe this is the first session that Leanne Dorman and I did together. I had one youth who was, she was 16 years old, a truancy issue, and also an ungovernable issue. Her mom called me up and said she was refusing to attend school, that she had an argument with her for about 45 minutes, and that she didn't think she was going to get her out of bed, and that I needed to come to a home visit and help her. I got her on the phone, and within 2 minutes, the girl was up, and she was in school within the next 20 minutes. I think that relationship is so important to these young ladies, that rapport that I had built with her through being in that program assisted her in making the right decision for herself, rather than me telling her, this is what you need to do. Probation's telling you you have to do this. What I talked to her about is the things she wanted for herself. And that's what motivated her, because I knew those things. It's actually happened twice with me for two different girls that it was that easy to build that rapport through this program. Did you have a question? Oh, I thought you I thought you were raising your hand. So with that, some of the things that I think comes up are, is it hard to be a probation officer and do this? And honestly, at first it is, especially as a supervisor, because you're talking about really difficult subjects. And in this position, you're frequently telling people, this is what has to be done, this is how it needs to be done, and if you're unsafe, and it's unacceptable. However, what going through the training made me realize is, yes, there's certain limits as mandated reporters. We go over that with all of the girls that participate in the program. Like, there's certain things that we have to report, illegal activities, we have to, address those sorts of things. And they do understand that. So it doesn't actually hinder the conversations. And, some of the other concerns that were, mentioned is, well, what if the girls get onto bad topics that, you can't correct them from, or, how does that work? Well, I've actually, surprisingly and amazingly, seen the process work so effectively that other girls in the program correct those situations. So they help each other out, and they say very impressive things that you would think these girls that are the reason why they're on probation are pretty serious reasons, but they, are helping each other solve these problems and come up with the responsible answer. So I've seen it work, pretty effectively, and I'm very impressed sometimes with what a 13-year-old girl will say to a 16-year-old girl. We try to keep those ages separate, but every once in a while, they do intermingle on subjects. So with that, I hope that we can do more. We're also offering this program to Saratoga County Probation and Washington County Probation. And I think this session that we have coming up, Saratoga is going to send 1 or 2 of their young ladies into the program because we've reached out to them and they feel like it's an effective program and they want to be a part of it. So there's that. There's a lot more to it, but I wanted to be brief and give you guys a little summary of why it works.
Thank you, Amy. Questions for Amy?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Wow.
From my family, I've learned that trafficking is a much bigger issue than what any of us may realize. Many of you know my wife is involved with pregnant parenting teens, and she's had a couple of instances where she'd had some suspicions about trafficking because of behavior-related issues. And because of its growth, I'm wondering how we expand this beyond probation, and I wonder if it's feasible to do. I don't know the answer, but I was shocked when I heard some of the statistics she told me, and I apologize, I don't remember them, but it was enough for me to realize that it's a big issue. It's an underground issue, and it's probably something that we should be working on to address.
So I brought this up with the Office of Mental Health and all the school districts. We have the ability, and probably Leanne Dorman will very much want to reach out and have more of a public forum, so they don't necessarily have to be PINS kids or JD kids that participate in this. The best part about it, it's mobile. It can go into any community. All you need is a facilitator and a second person there with the books and the curriculum. And right now Warren County has 2 sets of the curriculum because Leanne has her own and I have our own, which I'm willing to help, do and implement in different parts. So, it's definitely doable. We just have to have people who want the program.
How do we do something like that? I'm just thinking, like an hour presentation in the school systems or something. I'm not even sure if they're doing it yet or not. But again, the statistics were stunning. And
And sorry.
No, I'd like to see us move forward with something more. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
So one of the things that DSS did for their Safe Harbor, they have a Safe Harbor grant, and they implemented the White House and Warren County Respite and Homeless Youth Shelter as their Safe Harbor designee. I plan to reach out to Margaret DeVry and see if this is one of the curriculums she would like to put in the White House, as well as maybe perhaps just have a regular meeting in the library, maybe Crandall or something like that, where this is offered. And I'm in the school districts every year, multiple times a year, for multiple reasons. So I'm always preaching this. I'm always preaching evidence-based programming, and let's stop doing the things that don't work and let's start doing the things that do, and address the problems now. We don't have time. These young ladies are our future, and I certainly don't want to see them on an adult person's caseload for the same reasons that I had them on as juveniles. So, I mean, there's a way to do it, and there's definitely, I think, a lot of momentum. Leanne Dorman, I don't know if you know that name, but she is an amazing person. Kids really connect to her, and she definitely has the motivation and drive to do it. There's also a men's program that is a counterpart to this. They're working on getting an evidence-based approval. They're not quite there yet, but we are going to, Leanne Dorman has a staff member, a male staff member, who is going to do it with one of our new male officers that's working in the juvenile unit. So we'll start implementing that either this summer or next year. And so I think that will have a big effect and an impact on some of our male youth. There's also an adult female program that Leanne is more than happy to implement in our department as well, and we've talked a little bit about that, of how to proceed with that. So it's definitely doable, and I'll just make a note to make sure I meet with Margaret DeVry to see if she wants this program at White House.
And this is just one of the things we have been doing differently. We don't have time to talk about it now, but throughout the year we can talk about it.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for the report. When you brought this up a year or so ago of the Girls Circle, we were very hopeful for it, and it's great to hear this report. Thank you. Amy, did you? Any other questions?
Do you deal with youth court at all on this too?
I actually reached out to Youth Court to see if they were aware of it, and they were not aware of the curriculum, but I did talk specifically with Catherine Chambers to see if she had. Most of the referrals that we do to Youth Court come through me. So if she has girls that I think are appropriate in her program at the time, I'll say, hey, you know, we have this going on, let's see if we can get them as part of this.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That sounds great.
Scary. So the stories I'm not supposed to hear.
Next up is Public Defender. Marcy, you have the floor.
I just want to thank Amy for all the work she does. She and I work together when she does the interstate compacts and other things, and she does an amazing job. All of Bob's supervisors are great, including Bob, but Amy really is amazing, and I just want to thank her for that. You're welcome. It's true. I wouldn't do it unless I believed it. Okay. First thing I have on my agenda is request to fill vacancy position number 5. That attorney resigned due to personal reasons, and I'm requesting permission to fill.
Motion to bring to the floor, Supervisor Simpson, second by Supervisor Garrity. Discussion. So, and it's now vacant?
Yes, sir. Yes.
The second?
Yes.
Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Thank you. The next thing on the agenda I'm very excited about, which is year 1 of the 5-year plan for Office of Indigent Legal Service grant funding. In May 15th of last year, we received an email from Office of Indigent Legal Services dealing with this grant funding. And my application that I'll be doing here includes the assigned counsel office and my office. There's no legal aid involved in this. So this is only for criminal cases. Okay? No family court cases, only criminal cases. And so what happens is they gave us different categories for money that we would get. We would get money for quality improvement, then an adjustment to budget, giving us a little additional money to put where we needed in terms of those categories. Counsel at first appearance, caseload relief, and a data collection and data officer. Then they took those 5 categories and put it into 3 categories for us. So what I have attached here is the full grant that we have submitted. I'm looking for permission to submit the grant and to get approval to pass the grant. Can I just tell you a little bit about it before you...
We have a motion on the floor to bring to the floor by Supervisor Bramer, seconded by Supervisor Sokol. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. We have spent countless hours and hours on this program and on this grant. Mr. Moore, the county attorney, Tammy, my office, the assigned counsel office, meetings with the Office of Indigent Legal Services. They have reviewed it to State Department of Budget and then have sent it back and made correction suggestions. So there's a lot of time and effort that went into this proposal, and I'm hoping that you will deem it acceptable. The best part about this is it is for 5 years, as opposed to we have to keep going in year after year and requesting grants to be extended. This is for 5 years. So the categories that they have given us for funding, which is attached for you under caseload relief, quality improvement, and counsel at first appearance, all those categories we have worked a great deal on and working with things. Last year when we talked about budget issues, we talked about, I was only asking you to come up county funding for people who do family court in my office and who don't just only do criminal, because we knew we were going to get this funding, or we believed it, because the state was coming up with the money, and it has come up with the money. So that's why I was very careful in how I was phrasing things to you, because I knew this was coming. And again, this first year was from April 1st of last year through March 31st of this year. You'll notice that the grant came after that time period has ended, but we will be allowed to spend these funds. And going forward, we're going to be working on year 2, 3, 4, and 5. What happens with the grant is they give us X amount of dollars for the first year. For example, quality improvement, we received $18,758. Next year, it would be $37,516. So they take the money you get the first year, and then they double it. And then the third year is first year plus the second year gives you the third year. And the fourth year is third year plus fourth year gives you the next one. So they just add some each year to give us the full number that you have on the bottom there. So as a result, we have come up with plans to spend the money to maximize the results that would be in the public defender's office and in the assigned counsel office. We have attached for you, meaning Joy LaFountain and myself and my office, we have attached the goals, objectives, and performance measures that we have submitted and have been approved by Office of Indigent Legal Services. And I can give you further breakdowns if you want, but I think by you having this, it may give you enough information for it.
So explain on the salaries for attorneys. You have...
What we have done is Mr. Moore and Tammy have worked, and the county attorney have worked very hard on setting up some future policies and rubrics. And we have incorporated that into when we did this. We used the same formulas so that the salaries will be at a certain level, but then there'll be incentives based on the quality of that person works and the longevity. So we have all that put in here also. So that's important. In addition, it gives for additional funding for a data officer has to be paid for, a part-time secretary will become a full-time secretary. We only have in my office an investigator 2 days a week, so it will allow for another part-time investigator. Same thing with the DA's office. It's usually retired law enforcement, so they can only make a certain amount of money per year, so it covers that. It also gives us a social worker, which is something we desperately need to get our clients to comply with all the requirements of courts, and even to get them ready to be able to take a plea in a case. There's a lot of hoops that need to be jumped through. Substance abuse evaluations, mental health evaluations, where are they going, what are they doing, to be able to have someone help us to get these clients where they need to go is important. And that's a huge piece that we are going to be having in this grant. So I think those are all very important things that we put in it. In addition, there's a supervisor attorney position that I will be creating. In addition, there'll be another attorney after that.
So the supervising attorney is a brand new position?
Brand new position. It will be someone who has got more experience to help train the other attorneys, because often...
And funded by this grant?
All this is all funded. The county puts up $0. Nothing from the county, okay? This is all state funded. So we spend a great deal of time coming up with these plans and trying to make this work for the county. It also allows for a mentoring program with attorneys. So you take extremely experienced attorneys. When we have a difficult or complex trial, we can hire someone to help us with our trial team, because I always use 2 attorneys, just like the DA's office does for every trial, to go over with jury selection, theories of case law, research, anything that needs to be done. This will allow this to happen. In addition, we have money for experts, because my county budget is $2,500 for experts per year. Okay, I've already gone through that this year. But having this money will give me more. So if I take year 1 money, which ended on March 31st of this year, and then we double that for next year, it really helps. So it really gives us a huge amount of money to use resources where it needs to be without the county having to come up with any of the funding. You had a question?
The mentoring is not in-house?
No, mentoring is outside attorneys. So we really spend a huge amount of time trying to come up with something that would be best for this county. In addition, for the assigned counsel office, when we were doing all this stuff, all these plans together, Joy and I were present and going through them together. She has in this is funding for an attorney to help supervise her. There are legal questions that come up about conflicts and about cases, and therefore she will have someone that she can go to. She can't come to me. And the county attorney's office has a lot of things that they're doing with, besides dealing with all these things too. So it allows also for experts, for Joyce, for the attorneys on the assigned counsel office, and allows for training for them, allows for training for our people. The most important thing for me right now, I'm very excited about, is we are going to get printers, because we have 1 printer for the entire office, and I have satellite people in different offices that they have to run in and out to do it. So there's money for printers. Anyone who is hired, there's money for a desk station, computer, laptop, cell phone, all those things, anything that an attorney would need, books, it's all in the grant. So it's really been an all-encompassing thing. Yes.
Well, Supervisor Wild and Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a quick question. I haven't heard the word rubric used since, I think, probably when I was in Syracuse. So, could you help me understand
Sure.
again, use the word rubric and...
Sure. We look at a series of criteria looking at an attorney, what the workload is, and how complex the cases are, what their experience level, how much effort and time they put into things. We look at the entire person and the caseload and everything they do and make determinations. Have they worked above and beyond their expectation? And my goal is to make my attorneys the best attorneys possible and to encourage them to do this. So there should be an incentive for staying and for doing excellent work. And I feel that that has happened in not to everybody, because it never happens to everyone, but I think that it is really a way to analyze and make a decision about merit increase.
Good, thank you. Supervisor Bramer and Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you for all of your work. I mean, I know you've been working on this for a really long time and drilled down to every little thing, like you said, but down to the books that each attorney is going to have to purchase.
And chairs.
And
Chairs.
chairs.
Okay. It has allows me to get tokens to get people to court and into meetings with us, both bus tokens, and to get taxis if they're not within the bus line. All these things that I can't do normally. When I have to have someone come in and meet me. Well, they can't. So now we have to figure out where we're going, what we're doing, and where we can do this. And there's security and safety issues involved with all of this. When they come into our office, they go through a metal detector, so I feel safe and secure. I want everyone to feel safe and secure in my office. So, go ahead, sorry.
No, that information, that detailed level of information just hasn't been flushed out yet for years 2
No,
through 5.
we only had to submit for year 1 and get that approved.
But we know we're getting the other money for the following 4
Yes.
years.
Yes. Assuming the state keeps funding this. If the state stops funding, then it's all gone. Just like in terms of, I have an attorney hired that way. Erin is hired that way. Erin is here with me. And I can't live without her because she does all the math things for me. And keeps the books and gets it to the treasurer's office and to Oils. But the funding has not ended, and we know it's going into effect for the next year because that was one of the emails I sent you on April 1st talking about the future funding. It's been approved. So we already know we have year 1 funding. We already know we have year 2 funding. So that's great for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan, the chairman.
Very exhaustive. Thank you for that. But a question for Ryan. Are these stipends and merit-based, are these going to cause problems across other departments?
No, I don't think so. We took a look at all the attorney positions in all the departments that employ attorneys, and we are going to hold them all to the same rules, same way of doing it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chairman?
Yes, you answered my first question, which was that the positions are grant-based.
Yes.
If the grant goes away, the positions go away.
Yes, sir.
My next question is, how are the annual adjustments in salaries being handled within the budget? Are they being handled within the budget?
In terms of salaries, they are set up based on what they are now, and we always will allow for the adjustment in year 2 because we'll have more money coming in. So they'll be able to adjust that way for cost of living. If the county gets a cost of living to a grant-funded position, we will be able to because we will put that in the budget for year 2.
So you're saying the grant will cover that? those
Yes,
adjustments?
next year, yes. Yes, sir.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations. I know that a few months ago when we took a tour of your offices, the printers were an issue and all the other tools that you need in order to do your work. Space was a concern of yours at that time, and with the addition of manpower and womanpower into your office, I mean, are you going to be able to...
We will make it work. We always make it work.
Right, yeah, I understand that. Good,
We will.
thank
We
you.
always make it work.
Thank you.
No, we have a plan. You have a plan for that as well.
Yes, and there's, if another department has some other space coming available to them, when the courthouse complex last phase, or whatever, 5, or whatever the last phase number is done, there shall be some adjustments, and again, we'll have some movement that way. But we will all make this work. The investigator is part-time, and that new investigator will work on the days when my current investigator doesn't work, of course. So, that's one desk, so we don't have to worry about another desk there. So we will make it work, I promise.
Ryan, and then Supervisor Kramer.
I just wanted to thank Marcy and Aaron and Tammy for all the work that they do on this. These grants are very complex. The state office that handles them is slow. They have their own staffing issues, so it's really yeoman's work, and they do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. So my request, obviously, at the end of this, is if you would vote this forward so we can go. Let's spend money.
I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. The last thing is Section 5 discussion items. You had asked me to follow up on some legal issues. I had sent out emails on April 1st. In terms of the aid to localities from the Office of Indigent Legal Services, the budget for 2019 to 2020 is $204.8 million, so I can tell you that we have our funding in there. Of this funding, $100 million is to finance the second year of the statewide, so they have put aside already $100 million, and that has been approved. And again, into these categories, which is caseload relief, quality improvement, counsel at arraignment. And it also says in the email that I had sent around is that $81.0 million is allocated for ILS distributions and grants that will continue at their current level. So all the grants that I keep coming into you in distributions in the past saying, can you renew this, can you renew this, they're saying that the money is still there. So that's what the important out of this is. The other thing I had sent you as an email but didn't print out for you because it's 43 pages, is the some new case law. One of the things was that you discussed with Mr. Yusi earlier about the appearance ticket. As opposed to bail, normally when somebody comes into court, the issue of bail. They can issue appearance tickets if there is no outstanding warrants. So one of the issues comes if someone has a prior warrant or has a warrant history, then the court can set bail on them, okay? And that becomes important if you're talking about people from other jurisdictions. When they show up for court for an arraignment, that police agency will run a File 15 or a criminal history. We call it a File 15. So they'll be able to look at that, and it will see if there's a warrant history. And as a result, if that exists, then bail could be set, because that's one of the factors. So I know that wasn't, I'm trying to bring up stuff that Mr. Yusi didn't bring up, okay? It used to be, there's a criminal procedure law section that you would look at and you'd click off all these factors under bail. And one of them is that you would look at who's in your household. You don't have to look at that anymore. But one of the things that's interesting is if you have a revoked or suspended license on the AUO tickets, again, your failure to appear in court and respond to tickets when required, they could set bail on those. All sex cases are all things that require bail on. Domestic violence are things that require bail on. And violent charges, assault charges of weapons and serious assaults and those kinds of things all require bail. So I just wanted you to know that. One of the other things they could include as a sanction in terms of is, besides the release under supervision that Bob talked about, which happens regularly, it's something we see all the time, is electronic monitoring. So I think that may be something funding in the future that Bob may ask for from his office, because my recollection is the electronic monitoring is under his office's auspices. And so I think that may be something that may come up in the future. Okay, I don't need to tell you about that, and I told you about that already. One of the other statutes that occurred is dealing with speedy trial, and that deals with how fast a case has to occur. And so they're making sure speedy trial is actually adhered to. In city court, they have a standards and goals, which requires you to have a case done by a certain time period. Judge Hall does it all the time. Most of the other courts do not adhere to that. There's no sanction for the judge if he doesn't do standards and goals, but the idea in the speedy trial is to make sure people are not held longer in custody than is necessary and the case goes forward. The other piece that goes along with that is the discovery reform, which normally what happens is if you're going to trial on a felony the week before or the Friday before the case goes to trial on Monday, you get a huge box from the DA's office of all this discovery, all this material that we didn't have before, because the current criminal procedure law section doesn't require it to be handed over at that time, earlier in the case. The new discovery statute requires a lot more fast, within 15 days. So there's a lot of changes that way. None of these statutes go into effect until January 1st of 2020. I know my office will be doing training of it over the summer when we go to some state programs. I'm sure the DA's office over the summer will be doing training on it also. So those issues, even though you asked me to tell you about it, I think that's the most concise way I can give it to you at this point, because I don't really think you want me to go through 43 pages. The other thing I'd like to say, any other questions on the updates? Okay. The other thing I'd like to tell you is obviously I'm in city court on a regular basis, and Judge Hobbs has indicated to me that the centralized arraignment part, the office space, is completed. The wiring is done, and the judges, he's setting up training for the judges, so it will eventually happen, in the old jail down here. That should be happening soon. Sometime in May, I'm hoping. I haven't seen that yet. So I just wanted you to know the updates. Any other questions for me?
Did you say June?
Maybe May.
Okay.
He's got to set up the training for the judges and the schedule, so that is something beyond my control.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for me? And I thank you very much for giving me all your time today and for your support on the year 1 of 5 years. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for all
you
your
very
work
much.
on that, Marcy. Thanks for the updates.
Thank
It's good to keep us apprised. Any other business to come before the committee at this time? Hearing none, call for adjournment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.